You know, I found chain sharpening is something a lot of people have, a lot of different opinions and different ideas and concepts. There's a lot of different tools out there. Oregon 72 LG chain. I'm using the third chain sharp tool, very similar to the Husqvarna Sharp Force. It has, I use the 3/16 file on it, and this particular guide, I roll back till it straightens my top plate up, following the original witness mark on top of the tooth. And then the last couple strokes, I go down against the tooth in front, and it sets the depth gauge. And that's what I'm looking to do. So I work a little better with a vise, but many times in the field I don't have that. So more or less I'm steadying it and then filing through. Use the whole stroke of the file. Last couple strokes against the tooth in front, and that keeps where I don't apply too much pressure to kind of cause the file to warp, and I take the depth gauge a little too much. So I just go back into the radius of the tooth. Last couple strokes against the tooth in front sets the depth gauge setting. This uses kind of a progressive depth gauge adjustment because it's on top of the two teeth. But bottom line is that if you understand the parts of the tooth, we want to think about, let's take and put it back as close to how it came out of the box as we possibly can. If we can do that, it's probably going to cut pretty well. It has the depth gauge cut then with this flat file, and so it takes and does a really good job. I've been using it for several years. It's very smooth cutting, still aggressive enough to cut fairly rapidly. So I like it. It does a good job. And if there's no damage, if I see damage, I roll it back so that we're taking the middle of the round file and taking the damage off. Then as I roll it down, it's putting that surface back on. And so I'm going to bring it back here and use the middle of the file and take and realign my top angle there. I could use a good sharp flat file and do that, or I can use the middle of the round file. Now this side's going to take a few more strokes, and this particular and the left side cutters, which I'm on now, are a little bit shorter than the right side. But because this file setup takes each tooth independently, it allows me to have different length teeth, but because it sets that depth gauge progressively, it still cuts straight. That one's a little bit forward again. So I roll back to the middle of the round file, and that sets down in. Now, a lot of people think about getting all the way down into the gullet. That's necessary. Some versions of chain where that side plate kind of sticks out past it, and you've got to take that out so it doesn't bind in the side of the kerf. But all your chip clearance is actually coming up in that upper 25 to 30 thousandths of the side plate, and then the chisel angle. And as I mentioned, the depth gauge setting really sets up what angle that chisel angle that you have set with the top radius of the round file is going to bite into the fiber. And a lot of people don't realize that. The depth gauge setting makes your chisel angle more vertical. If you've got a lot of hook there, then it more or less bites in too deep. And as I mentioned, the depth gauge setting really sets up what angle that chisel angle that you have set with the top radius of the round file is going to bite into the fiber. And a lot of people don't realize that. The depth gauge setting makes your chisel angle more vertical. If you've got a lot of hook there, then it more or less bites in too deep. that's where you start getting chattering and grabbing, and it can increase reactive forces. I'm only applying pressure forward with the file because you don't want to really drag it back with pressure onto the tooth. So as you push forward, that that file cuts only going forward. And so if you see here now, I've got, even without the file guide, this sets up, and about 1/5 of the file is above that top plate. So the 3/16 fits this tooth very nicely. Now the only other thing that I'll usually do here, this depth gauge, if you look just right there, that if you start filing them down flat, you get a little bit of a ledge right there. And so I'm not going to touch the height of it, but I'm going to go around here and just roll that front edge of that plate, so the depth gauge plate, so you don't have a little sharp edge there. And this chain will still cut perfectly straight because each tooth is being loaded by the depth gauge and the chisel angle to take the same amount of wood. All these teeth work in conjunction with the rest of the teeth on the loop. It's designed to work in multiple types of fibers and trees. And so if we follow the design that it was originally set up to, it's probably going to give us our best results. So think about that as you're sharpening. Try to get it as close back to box stock, no matter what type of tool. If you're just using a round file and a flat file, if you're using some type of a guide, or you're using a grinder setup, try to get it back to box stock, because that's going to be really what's going to cut best in all cutting conditions. They spend a lot of money with a lot more equipment, a lot more studies, a lot more testing than we ever could think about doing. And it's going to change every time we change wood. It's going to change every time we change RPMs or how we handle the saw. All of that comes into the process of the cutting. Make it as close to box stock as you can. Good sawing to you. See ya.